Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good afternoon, everyone. Phil Pinarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. Hope you're having a great start to your Tuesday. Well, Monday marked 100 years since one of the most luxurious spots in all of Michigan met its demise. Hotel Ottawa stood for nearly 4 decades on the lakeshore before a fire took over it and nothing was left. News 8 digital reporter Matt Jaworowski, as part of his Sunday Story series, looked back on that fateful day this past weekend. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today to really talk a little bit more about this story.
Sure, anytime.
Yeah, and just kind of talking about the hotel, let's get a little bit of background going. The hotel itself, built in just a few months, really, and it took about $650,000 in today's money to really get it up and started.
Mm-hmm. So Hotel Ottawa, for those who do not know, is kind of the crown jewel of the Lake Makatawa area. So it was one of the first hotels to be built right on the Lake Makatawa shoreline, kind of sandwiched in between Lake Makatawa and Lake Michigan. This was the very beginning of what historians kind of called the leisure industry. It times up with really like a second wave of technological innovation, so that work that's being done in factories is being done easier, it's being done faster. So workers are getting more downtime and more income as well, more expendable income. So obviously the lakeshore is a beautiful spot to visit. We attract people from all over the country, especially all other parts of Michigan, and they were coming out to this little spot in Ottawa County. Hotel Ottawa was kind of, I call it the crown jewel of them all. There were several, but this was really the biggest one, and in some ways kind of the most unique. It was built, as you said, in the 1880s. It took only a matter of weeks. In its more primitive state, but even the early photos that you see, it has the charm and some of the elegance that the hotel was known for. And very quickly, the hotel was actually moved. They put it up on logs, moved it closer to the water, and the people who owned it expanded it, adding a lot to it, adding a big annex so that they could hold a lot more people. And before it burned down, it could hold more than 1,000 visitors at a time. So it was certainly a big draw to the lakeshore.
Definitely. And in the story, you touched on, and we were even kind of talking a little bit before the stream started, just about how this sort of kicked off the tourism industry here in Michigan. And what was it, sort of the perception of it during those 37 years it was running? Just from the crowds of people that were gathering, as you mentioned, over 1,000 people could be held at this place at one time and really get to experience the lakeshore for themselves.
Right. I mean, it was a fairly popular spot. So the hotel was first built, actually. The idea came from people who owned a railroad company. They had this big plot of land up there, and they had planned basically this entire neighborhood. It was supposed to be several neighborhoods worth of cottages and a ton of held green space. And this hotel is kind of built as part of that. One, to attract people to the area, but two, also to kind of serve as a gathering place for the people that live there, or for the people that summered there. And so really, that original plan actually plays a big role in Park Township's story. And we'll get to that as we talk later about the fire and what happened afterward. But Hotel Ottawa was kind of always seen as like the center of that, the middle of it all.
Right. And just as a reminder to everybody, Matt's story really goes in depth on the history of the hotel, the fire itself, which we're about to get into, everything you need to know really regarding that whole area. And that story can be seen right now in its entirety over on our website, woodtv.com. Matt, of course, now we do have to talk a little bit about that fateful day on November 6, 1923, when the fire really took hold of the hotel and really burned it down to the ground. Just talk to us about that fateful day and really what happened, how the fire kind of got started, where it started, and really the issues that firefighters really had to deal with when they were trying to put it out.
Yeah, there were a couple of factors that really broke the wrong way for the hotel owners. For one, this is early November, so it's a downtime for them. We're getting into the winter time, not nearly as many vacationers here. They were actually working on renovations at the time. They had just finished renovating one of their main annex buildings. When the fire broke out, it was late in the afternoon. I think they say around 5 o'clock. And they believe at this time they have the primitive tools. They don't really know exactly what caused the fire. but they believe it was just faulty wiring within the main building that triggered the fire. The hotel was equipped with what they called, firefighting equipment. They had a water tank specifically to handle fires, and they had more than 1,000 feet of hose. So really, they should be able to get to any part of the grounds. But that water tank was actually drained just a couple days before the fire because the primary custodian was going out of town to go on a deer hunting trip. So we don't need this water anymore. And turns out they really did. So by the time one of the clerks that worked at the hotel was the one who first noticed the fire, it was by historical records relatively small at the time. He ran to go get help. He ran to actually the custodian's cottage. His wife was there. She's the one who called for the fire department to come out. By the time they get there and get set up, because they've got to throw pumps and hoses into the lake to actually get water to fight this fire, that whole process took about 20 minutes. And at that time, the hotel is pretty much doomed. So the hotel is fully involved at that point, and the firefighters and all the local people that just jumped into action, volunteered to help. They really moved toward, we need to try and save the houses that are nearby and these other buildings and businesses, because we're not going to be able to save the hotel. And that's ultimately what happened. They said if it wasn't for that quick action, probably another 70 to 80 buildings and cottages could have been lost. So could have been a really devastating fire for that area.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, though, the hotel was lost, and took a bad turn in the story, just kind of hearing about how this pretty prominent place that a lot of people visited was now completely gone. But it's not completely gone, actually, Matt. There is somewhat of a silver lining that you put at the end of the story that I really found interesting with the Pump House Museum, how it's the last kind of surviving structure of the hotel, and really kind of what the group behind that museum have really put together to allow people to take a step back in time and kind of revisit it and also just experience and see everything. I mean, they were a huge help to you in your story, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they were. I talked to a couple people with the local historical society there, and people who help out the museum, and a couple other historical works. So there are a couple things that really stand out. One, the pump house is still there. It's now the Pump House Museum. It's the only facility from the hotel complex that's actually still standing. So after the hotel burned down, there were a couple of things that did survive this fire, including the pump house, which was a brick building kind of on the edge of the property. After the hotel burned, that building was converted to pump water to the nearby cottages. Once public utilities came through in the 80s to bring water to those areas, the pump house it wasn't needed anymore. It kind of fell into disrepair, and it wasn't until just about a decade ago that the local historical society and Ottawa County kind of partnered together to rehabilitate the building and convert it into this museum, which is a really cool place to check out and visit. It's open during the summer, so it's closed for the season now, but it's free. There's a lot of really interesting tidbits there, including telling stories about the hotel and this fire, and kind of the story of Holland's Lighthouse and how Park Township kind of developed. So the silver lining they talk about, one is a lot of those cottages that were saved are still there. So we have some really historic and unique lakeshore homes that survived that fire. But two, what we realized afterward is the hotel owners apparently did not understand this, but they did not, although they owned the hotel, they did not own the property that the hotel sat on. That was still considered part of this neighborhood plan that I talked about earlier that was for decades earlier. And it wasn't challenged by the hotel owners, but there were court processes that played out all the way to the state Supreme Court that said, according to this document, these slates of public land, this saved green space needs to stay green space. And that's really what is now known as Holland State Park. That's the reason why the park was brought there in the first place. So now everyone has access to the beach, has access to this park area. So that's when I talked to Dan Ahmed, he's the president of local historical society. He was one who's like, it really kind of is a good thing, is if the hotel didn't burn down, who knows what would eventually happen to that property. If we didn't play out this process this way, we probably don't have that state park. So that's kind of the really interesting way to look at how that all happened.
Right. Yeah. No. A little bit of a silver lining there, Matt, for sure, and definitely. You know, you got some great shots of what kind of the Pump House Museum does sort of have inside, and definitely want to encourage everybody to go ahead and check that out, and also check out the full story on Hotel Ottawa and the fire that took hold of it 100 years ago. You can definitely check it out right now over on our website, woodtv.com. If you're watching us on Facebook, just head on over to the description box or the comment section. You'll find a link there. Matt, thank you so much for stopping by today. We really do appreciate getting a little bit more of a closer look on your story from last Sunday. We look forward to talking to you again next week.
Of course, thank you.
Absolutely, and I want to thank everybody else for tuning into this latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Pinarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.